Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am calling the April 2018 Village of Ossining Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing to order. I ask that you please turn off your cell phones on the board. For those in the audience, please do not engage in activities that might distract the board or the applicants or their respective representatives. Please do not engage in long, extended conversations during the proceedings. Any conversations by audience members should be conducted outside the hearing room. At the end of the applicant's presentation, the public will be given the opportunity to speak on relevant issues involving the application. I want to stress to the applicants and their representatives that you are speaking to the zoning board. The planning department, the corporation council, and the building department are here to support the zoning board. Do not direct your conversations towards them. Roll call.
Marcel Forrestal.
Present.
Bob Fritchie.
Present.
Greg Meyer.
Here.
George Bailing is not present at the moment. Sue Donnelly.
Present.
Stuart Kahan, Corporation Counsel.
Present, thank you.
Lynn Brooks, Audley, Director of Planning and Development. Present. And Joe Castanelli, Building Inspector.
Present.
Our first item up on the agenda tonight is ZBA 2116 Croton Avenue, the Baker property.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
the applicant speaks, can I just give the board an update on this?
Can you, yeah.
Before this applicant speaks, is it okay to give you an update on? So since we didn't have a full board for the last meeting, just a brief update on where this application stands. This applicant is seeking area variances to construct a multifamily structure in an MF2 zone district. It's a proposed 12-unit development consisting of 9 one-bedroom units and 3 two-bedroom units. It's approximately 17,693 square feet and is located in the MF2 district. This application was before the planning board and they served as lead agency. And the applicant has presented a variety of iterations of the plan to the planning board. As part of the process, Keller Sessions, which was our outside engineer, reviewed the engineering aspects of the plan for the planning board and offered comments. On January 16th of this year, Keller Sessions issued a memo that noted the applicant had done they had submitted a draft stormwater prevention plan for review, and it had been developed enough to demonstrate that the stormwater management was feasible on the site. The applicant, as requested by the planning board, has submitted a photometric or lighting plan for the planning board's consideration. The planning board felt the plan was adequate, voiced no additional concerns or issues to be fleshed out with regard to that plan. The village's consulting engineer also, the proposed lighting plan addressed any potential impacts related to the seeker process. The plan, as requested by the planning board, the applicant analyzed the potential traffic impacts and determined that no further traffic study was warranted. Keller Sessions noted that the applicant has addressed any traffic impacts as it relates to seeker. At the January planning board meeting, the planning board voted to consider issuing a negative declaration for the project. The planning board directed the applicant at that point to appear before the zoning board to determine whether the zoning board would grant the 4 requested variances. The planning board has since issued a negative declaration, which was disseminated to this board.
The zoning board.
Yes,
Planning board.
to this, well, it was sent to you guys also.
Yeah.
So the applicant is requesting 4 area variances from this board. 2 of the variances for lot width and lot size would be required no matter what they construct on the site, whether it's a 2-family house, a 25-unit development, or the current 12-unit proposal. The first variance that they request is related to the size of the lot. The minimum in the MF2 district, the minimum lot size required for the development is 40,000 square feet, and the applicant has only 17,693. The second variance is related to the lot width. The code stipulates that the applicant needs a minimum lot width of 150 feet. The applicant has a lot width of 85. The third variance is for the front yard setback, and the code requires that the applicant provide a setback of 40 feet, and the applicant is providing 6. The planning board actually requested that this applicant pull the development closer to the street to connect to the pedestrian setbacks, and that's why that variance request is so great. The fourth variance is for combined setbacks. In the code, the minimum combined setback is 60 feet. Here, the applicant provides combined setbacks of 41.56 feet, and that is based on the way they developed the building. The applicant came before the planning board in February. They got a negative declaration under seeker, and they will return to the planning board for site plan review and approval. The applicant is before you tonight for the variances requested. As requested by this board at the last meeting, the applicant has noticed all the property owners within 300 feet of the property. Notice was sent on 4/3 of this month, and they submitted an affidavit of mailing as well as the certificates were filed with the planning department on Friday the 6th. And I just wanted to let the zoning board bear in mind that these are all area variances, so pursuant to 270-48B2 of the village zoning code, and as also codified in New York State village law, the area variances, this board needs to determine whether the area variances can be granted, and they need to take into account the following: whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood, or there's a detriment to nearby properties that will be created by the granting of the area variances, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the variance, whether the requested area variance is substantial, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district, and whether the alleged difficulty was self-created.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Joseph Stargiati, and I'm the attorney for the applicant. I'm also here with J.B. Hernandez. He is our architect. Just to follow up on what Ms. Brooks Abbey said, in addition to filing the affidavit of mailing and the certificates of mailing, I also received back some green cards, and one envelope was unclaimed. Forwarding time expired, so it came back to me.
Thank you.
And if more come in the meanwhile, I'll also submit those to Ms. Brooks Avenue. One point that I want to reiterate has been discussed in our prior discussions was that this property was previously zoned commercial. My clients acquired the property in 1986. It was vacant, substantially in the same condition it's in right now. At the time, it was fully buildable, lot line to lot line. There were no setback requirements, although there were certain density limitations. But in 2009, the village board rezoned it, and in rezoning it, they changed the use, but also in changing the use, they that particular zone includes certain setback requirements and size requirements which this lot does not meet. So as Ms. Brooks Avenue said, there are certain things that we need to have a variance in order to build anything, and that is the overall size and the width of the lot. The other two variances, again, the front yard setback variance, the building had been pulled forward to comply with the 40-foot setback. You could not build the building. The building would be set back so far, the building envelope would be minuscule, and you could not build the building. So we need some front yard setback variance in order to build a building. And my clients originally proposed a building that was about 12 feet setback, but the village board, the planning board actually requested that the building be pulled forward so there'd be more of a street front building, and the parking would not be in front of the building, in between the building and the sidewalk, but rather under the building and to the side and behind the building. So it's more of a street front building. With regard to the side yard setbacks, it is our view that less of a variance, a smaller building, would be non-functional, not really realistic in terms of, this is about a 25-foot wide building, JJ? And in order to have those units be functional and there be a hallway and so on, this is really the minimum size building we can build. My clients worked hard at scaling down the building so that whatever you could have built on a conforming lot, they've scaled it down, so this lot is 45% of a conforming lot. there are fewer than 45% of the number of units you could build on a conforming lot. It is, the number of bedrooms are fewer than the number of units, number of bedrooms that could be installed on a conforming lot. So they've scaled it down to meet the the requirements of the law, but not with regard to a conforming lot, but rather to a lot of this size, in an effort to build what the village board has determined is the appropriate use for this lot, which is a multifamily residential structure rather than a commercial building, but also to meet the spirit of the code. The lot cannot be enlarged. All of the properties around it are already developed. Nobody has anything for sale. Nobody's trying to sell anything, and my clients cannot acquire any property in order to enlarge this lot. So they have to work with what they have in view of the rezoned lot that the village board has determined is appropriate. So unless you have any questions, or for me, for myself, or my architect, we're prepared to open up the public hearing and take questions from whomever, what name.
Well, this is part of the public hearing.
That's fine. We're prepared to.
I would like to just question how, and I'm sure that somebody can answer that, just for our own thing. You're planning on having 20 parking spots on this property with this building. So you're only looking to have 60% impervious coverage?
I'm going to let my architect get up and address that.
The way we have achieved that is that we have put, I believe it's 9 of the parking spaces underneath the building to reduce the amount of impervious area.
So so the green space is in the back? Where that,
The green,
where I
this
see
is
the
all the
tree?
green.
Right back
I
here?
think, yeah, and we do have a render drawing that shows the green. That's all the green space we have. As you can tell, I mean, this is the outline of the building, and so this is to be all green, the perimeter in the back. And also by doing this, we have moved the entrance, which was another of the issues that we had in the past is with this project. There was the 2 driveways being together and creating a traffic issue. So now we have moved the driveway to the other end, closer to the intersection of Clinton and Crown Avenue, and we have reduced that issue.
While I totally understand how you calculated out the 12 apartments, which then made it 20 parking spots, where is the justification for the applicant to, let's call it, get his money's worth by having that 12 apartments? Why can't it be less than 12 apartments?
Well, financial justification, I know that we went through the density of the project.
You went to the, I
Density,
get that
right.
part, right.
Well, we didn't base it on a financial, I mean, at least I didn't do it that way. I based it on the density of the project, being that if, like Joe said, we have 17,000 square feet, which is about 44%. One of the issues that we had with the planning board, and we worked through it, is that they wanted to know the density of the project. And in this case, given the size of this project, and if we apply the zoning code to the project, and in MS2, we end up with 15 units. So we reduced that. We only proposed 12 units.
And may I address this?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I've said in my written supportive papers that it's important to my client that they have a financial return for their investment, and I think that is important. But I would say this, although financial return is a consideration for the zoning board on use variance applications, it's not part of the statute and it's not required. I could understand why you would want to know, and I would say this. This building meets the floor area ratio, unit count, bedroom count of the code, and that was the focus of these applicants in developing this size building with this number of units and this number of bedrooms. Not necessarily the greatest financial return, because to be perfectly honest, they could have included more units and still met the floor area ratio, the unit count, and the bedroom count, but they scaled it down further than was absolutely minimally required in order that they could then also fit the parking spaces and not have to seek a parking variance. So they eliminated one variance by reducing the size of the building beyond what they could have designed. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, my concern is not necessarily, my concern is if you're familiar with the area where this lot is,
I am.
it's a very, I read all the traffic reports, I read that, you know, but it's a very congested area, and to have these cars going in and out of yet another driveway, I was just looking for it, why can't it be, my personal opinion is, and again, it's my opinion only, why does it have to be this many units that require this many parking spots? And then, because I could see their return being with less. I'm just asking the question.
As any developer.
Of course he wants the most,
There's
yeah.
a reason you buy property and you build buildings. It's because you're a developer and a builder, and that's what you do for a living. And yeah, they would like to maximize their return, but not to the point of the detriment of the community. We really don't think that this building creates a detriment. I'd also say that the planning board in the secret process looked at the traffic studies and determined that there would be no substantial negative environmental impact, particularly with respect to traffic, but all the other issues that go along with that. So they developed this building because they thought this was the right size, not because it's the biggest building, but of course the right size for them to realize the greatest return for their investment. It costs money to put in a foundation. If you build a 4-story building, the foundation's the same, you know? So that's their justification. To be honest, this is really a rather modest building, particularly in view of some of the other buildings and structures that are around it. It is going to add people, and it's going to add cars. It is. But that's any development.
It may be a modest building as compared to the buildings around it, but it's a very small property too.
It is.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions before you turn it over to the public?
Does anybody have a question here? Okay, we'd like to ask if anybody from the public who's here to speak on that, on the Thornton Avenue. Sir, could you give your name and address, and do you promise to tell the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name
You
is
need to talk into that mic.
my name is Cal Fishbone.
Is that turned on? Jamie, could you check if that mic's turned on? Because we're used to the other guys.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is that better?
yeah, much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cal Fishbone. For over 40 years, my family has run Clinton Terrace Apartments, which is the building right next to this subject property. This plan put before you tonight and in prior meetings is just the latest idea, let's call it, by the Bakers to take a very small, irregular piece of land with poor ingress and egress and try to get something pushed on there. It's been since 1986 that no zoning board, no planning board has allowed it for a reason. As the chairwoman stated, this is a very small property. It's irregularly shaped. They have poorly maintained it over the many years that they've had it. There's stacks of wood. They just don't take good care of it. It would have a huge undesirable impact. As Ms. Brooks Abbey was mentioning the criteria that you need to meet to get this zoning variance. First, I'd like to reiterate the type of variance they're requesting. It's requesting on a piece of land that's less than half of the minimum lot area, just a little more than half of the minimum lot width, 15% of the front yard minimum setback, and 2/3 of the minimum side yard setback. This is a heck of a variance. And the reason is this is not a suitable piece of land to build a 12-story unit with parking lot underground. It buttresses right onto our parking lot. There's no way in, no way out of this. And I just feel that the undesirability of the project, the negative detriment to the property that we own and manage and have been part of this community for many, many years is sizable. The variance that they're requesting is huge, and it's just a small property that's not suited for this type of a plan. Thank you.
I just want to correct you, it's not a 12-story building, it's a 12
I'm sorry if I
apartments.
misspoke. 12
I just
apartments.
want to make sure.
I misspoke.
No, I think you were just checking if we were listening.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there anyone else here to talk on the Groton Avenue Baker property? All right, thank you.
Madam Chairperson, so what is the next step in terms of us seeking the board to vote on this?
Well, we're going to keep this public hearing open, which means we go down every single item that we have on our agenda tonight.
Yes, okay.
And then we'll discuss afterwards and see if we're ready to make a decision on it, because we have new members, as you well know. And we'll decide whether we're ready to make a decision on it tonight or not.
And would we have the option, if you decide you are ready, would we have the option of deferring that until we have a full complement if we choose to? We don't have a full complement, full board here tonight, so
Yes,
we have the option to do that. So
Yes.
we'll wait around and see how that all goes.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
Can I just mention one other thing? I just received the notice.
Sir, you have to-
Sorry.
You have to come back up to the mic, okay?
I just received the notice of tonight's meeting yesterday, which is, I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional, but if there is going to be further
Are
action.
you the
on this-
owner of the
I'm
apartment
the
complex?
managing partner for the partnership group.
So
that
the,
owns it.
so the notice would have gone to, the notice would have gone to your office, I assume, or?
I received it yesterday.
Okay,
So if there's somebody on the board or somebody way I can know that I'll be kept better informed of any progress.
well, that's part of the reason, is because it was on the agenda for a long time that we asked to have it re-noticed to the public. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
182 Spring, ZBA 2717, 182 Spring Street. Excuse me, could we take that down? Yeah.
Before you finish, can you just show that to Catherine? Can you show your friend Catherine so she can capture
Oh,
that
yes.
landscape plan on the video? So Madam Chair, I just give
Thanks very much. Sir, hold on one second. Sir, your name and address, please, and...
My name is Louis Saiz Jr. I'm the architect of record. I live at 41 Springdale Avenue, White Plains, New York.
Okay, and do you promise to tell the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Thanks, sir.
With me tonight is the owner, Walter Guerrero. We are here in front of the board looking for a use variance to reestablish the laundromat at 182 Spring Street, which is in a T zone, which only permits one-family homes and two-family homes conditionally. Existing at 182 Spring Street is a vacant first floor which previously had a laundromat, and on the second floor, two one-bedroom apartments. Our objective tonight is to present two options that we put together, gave you additional information, and those two options are, one, to reestablish the laundromat on the first floor and maintain the two one-bedroom apartments on the second floor, And the second option is to convert the house into compliance and build or do alterations to the building to create a two-family residence. So those are what we're presenting tonight. We submitted floor plans to the two-family home. We gave you financials, and basically as a summary, option one, which is the reestablishment of the laundromat, we're looking at about $80,000, which would be for alterations of upgrades to bring the building into compliance with handicap accessibility and create aesthetic improvements, interior and exterior, and also the equipment that the laundromat will require. The income that will be generated, expected income, laundromat will be like $10,000 to $12,000, and the two apartments is $2,500 per month. So the total being $12,000 to $14,000, $500,000 a month, which will create a payout of about 3 to 5 years. So that's the financial for option one. Option two is the conversion of the building into a two-family. And this is the layout that I came up with and we had priced out. It's basically 2 3-bedroom apartments with 2 bathrooms and a kitchen. And the plan is mirrored front and back, entrance on the first floor, living room, kitchen, dining areas, and a full bath on the first floor. And then on the second floor, a master bedroom with its own bathroom and 2 additional bedrooms. So essentially, it's a two-family house. The estimated cost on that is $386,000. The expected income for this area, we're looking at about $1,950 per apartment, bringing us our total income per month to $3,900. The expected payout, long-term, not immediate, not foreseeable. Mr. Guerrero might be in the ground before he gets this paid off. So the hardship was not self-created. It was actually created by the previous owner who had a fire at the laundromat, didn't reestablish it within the allotted time that he had per the zoning code. But the new owner bought the property knowing well of this situation, but unfortunately did not know what the financial commitment to bring this building into compliance, which is this version creating it into a two-family. The situation is unique to this building because the laundromat has always existed. It's been there long-term. The facade still exists. It still says laundromat over it. So if the use variance was granted to them, the neighborhood would not change. It would actually activate the first floor, bring life to it. They're planning to renovate the exterior aesthetically so it'll be more pleasing, and actually it would bring a convenience back to the neighborhood that doesn't exist right now because the closest laundromat is about a half-mile away. So that would be brought back into the neighborhood. I'm pretty sure the people living on the second floor would appreciate having laundry right below them also. And that basically is the end of my presentation. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to field them, and if I could answer them.
Is it going to be an owner-occupied?
No, not to my knowledge. Do I live here?
Living upstairs?
Are you going to live there, or? No, not owner-occupied.
When was the last time it was a laundromat? When did it burn down?
2014.
We on? I've got to turn it on. Okay. The fire was in February of 2014. The prior owner, Mr. Masula, was before the zoning board in 2015, in May of 2015, to get a determination as to whether the non-conforming use had expired. He explained at that point that because of issues with insurance, apparently his insurance adjuster absconded with some of the funds, and he had some personal physical issues. He was unable to get the work completed in time. So at that point, the zoning board indicated through a resolution that he had not, as of 2015, had not lost his non-conforming use. Since that time, Mr. Masulo apparently lost the property as a result of a foreclosure and was subsequently purchased by the current owner now. So it has, the last time we know that it was used as a laundromat would have been in February of 2014.
Is that your presentation? Is that,
That's it for my presentation.
okay, go ahead, Greg.
Can you explain a little bit the, how you got the financial numbers? You know, usually when somebody comes before us for a use variance, we have to look at the reasonable rate of return and how you got to those numbers. And typically we require some outside evidence, some third-party validation, so perhaps you could explain that to us.
I wish I could. I wasn't involved on that end. I mean, it was all put together by the owner's accountant, that I could say. The research for the rental for the new two-family apartment, that was based on numbers from Zillow and a local realtor, from what I was instructed. On the numbers that were generated for the laundromat, we gave you a ballpark because on a good month, it could be $12,000. On a slow month, it could be as low as $10,000 to $9,000. So that's just from him knowing other people that have similar businesses.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the board? Is there anyone here to speak on 182 Spring Street? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
CBA 0118, 65 North Malcolm. That's the one where they were just doing the,
Correct.
this one?
You requested them to correct the.
That's on the
submit
worksheet.
it. Yep,
That's
it's on
correct,
it.
that's the
Yep,
one.
and they submitted it.
This particular parcel, we had asked them to just give us a complete worksheet, so that in the future, we're just trying to make it easier for the building departments and for the property owners. So we're not trying to make any extra work for anybody, but, okay, is there anyone here, okay. Is there anyone here to speak on 65 North Malcolm?
Yes. Good night, good night.
Good evening, please give us your name and,
My name is Irvin Ridgway. I live at 68 North Malcolm Street.
and do you promise to tell the truth under penalty of perjury, sir?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Right now, Malcolm Street is heavily saturated. Cars are parked illegally. I'm still trying to get the police officers to issue tickets. The quality of life is going down. And that's because we have so many houses on Malcolm Street, whether they're legal or illegal, that's having rentals, room rentals. You're having family, you have one family homes, and I guess it's legal to have people living in a house sharing the bathrooms and kitchen. So therefore we have adults with multiple cars. On Sarah Street alone, it's like it's a throughway, it's a dead-end street. And there's cars coming up and down that street, taxis back and forth. So you come outside, you gotta watch your step. And that's how busy it is, I'm not exaggerating here. So therefore, another building going up, that's multi-family, bringing in probably 6 cars, 4 minimum, coming in. And if they have kids, there might be other cars too. These cars can be driving into the neighborhood. And it's so busy as it is right now, that any other activity in that area has become overly saturated. Because the parking issue is, like I'm saying, it's too much. If you drive down Malcolm Street, if 2 cars are coming different directions, sometimes one car has to stop to allow the other car to come around.
Right.
And if a car parks there, it just makes it crazy. Now, I'm on the corner of Sarah and Malcolm Street. So I hear the noise, the horn blowing, people yelling. I'm hearing everything. And it's becoming worse. So right now, I have to make a stand to say something, because if not, what's going to happen is that that neighborhood is not going to be a neighborhood anymore. It's going to be a hood. No more neighbors. And right now, we don't have too many neighbors. We only have people that live next door. So it's a big problem to me that's going on right now in Austin, and particularly in this area, and I have to voice my opinion on it, because backing out of my driveway, I'm looking twice, 3 times. Cross the street, the same thing. I got kids, there's other kids in the neighborhoods as well. So therefore, to have a 2-family structure in this, 1 family, beautiful. 2 family, you can't have it no more on this particular neighborhood. I can't speak for other neighborhoods, but this neighborhood, you can't do it. It's already saturated, overly saturated, and the quality of life, like I'm saying, is gone. So I gotta try to stand here now and try to bring it back a little bit, so decent families can come to the neighborhood and create that again. Thank you.
Thank you. So you know that the house is existing, right?
Yes,
Where'd the gentleman go? Okay, okay. And they are, and part of their plan is to have 4 parking spots in the backyard.
yeah, but those cars are not gonna be airlifted in. They gotta drive into the neighborhood.
I totally agree with you.
And that's what the problem is. It's a single family now, it'd be great. I would love to see a family, single family, come into a neighborhood. Matter of fact, I want to see more single families come to the neighborhood. Maybe it could be that neighborhood where I can go knock on the door and bring them apple pie. That's not going on right now, but we need that. So therefore, we have no idea who's coming into the neighborhood right now. And they'd be here today and going tomorrow, because they have small investment as a tenant. So when a family comes in, it's more of an investment for a family. So they're gonna wanna make sure their neighborhood's right too.
Thank you, sir.
One question for you. You mentioned when you're backing up, you gotta look both, do you look both ways? Is Malcolm one way or is it 2 ways?
Well, I'm sorry, my driveway is actually on Sarah Street.
It's on Sarah,
So
okay.
Sarah's a dead end.
Okay, so Sarah's, okay,
Sarah is a dead end street, and I have to do that on a dead end street.
okay.
So that just goes to show the traffic that be coming in and out. And there's no sidewalk on Sarah Street, because the dead end is, there's really
And the
no
houses are very
sidewalk.
close together.
The houses are really close together. I mean, if I had the money, I would buy a few houses, knock it down, to be honest with you. Because they're too close together, heavily saturated, and the problem again, legal for people to be in the building, sharing the bathroom and the kitchen. And 100 people could be in an apartment, in a house. That's what's going on. So it's becoming overly aggressive in this neighborhood. So you come outside, and on the corner I'm hearing the horn blowing, the name calling, oh, forget about it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with this, and we have to stop it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions? I shouldn't say. Anyone else here to speak on 65 North Malcolm?
Can the applicant wants to know if we can address you?
Sure.
Absolutely. So,
Sorry about that.
oh no, it's quite all right. I do agree in part with what the neighbor is saying.
Again, say your name and.
Frank Ippoliti, 9 Iroquois Road, Austin.
Okay.
Thank you. So I do agree with what the neighbor is saying about the traffic. A lot of it is stemming from Sarah Street because there is no parking from Sarah Street. I have actually somebody who has been parking in my driveway from Sarah Street, and I can't get them to leave. But the other question or the other comment that was brought up was bringing a family into the neighborhood. This wouldn't be a small investment per se. So you would have potentially an owner-occupied property. I do have in mind a gentleman who is an Ossining wrestling coach, and he would like to move him and his 2 daughters into the property. And to another point that was made addressing the parking of the area, I believe that for the 2 bedrooms that we have on both floors, I believe 4-car parking is sufficient. I don't think anybody here can address further issues that may be arising from tenants who come in and share bathrooms and just pile into one apartment. I mean, we can't justify and say that that's gonna happen in any situation. So I believe the parking that we've submitted for this property is adequate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You plan on having leases and one family in each apartment?
Yes,
Okay.
well, at this point, for the board, the gentleman that I have been talking to is a wrestling coach for my sons, who moved to Georgia, came back, and is looking for a place which he
I just
can-
want to, I don't care about the specific person, I'm just.
Yes, he
when
would-
you said I can't tell you if people are
Right,
gonna
so
be-
the person who.
You're planning on renting it to
Exactly.
a family or single or couple?
Yes, or selling it to this individual as an owner-occupied
Oh,
property.
okay, oh, I see what you're saying.
Yes, so that's my intention.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Could I just reiterate to that?
Well,
I'll be
you
short.
might, sir,
I
and
know
then
we'll be
make
here
it nice
all
and
night.
short.
I'm sorry, but
It's okay.
that's just my point.
Yeah.
He just explained the reason why I'm saying Sarah Street the way it is, and it's the same on Malcolm Street. And he has no control over who he's gonna rent it to. And everybody's a nice guy. Everyone's gonna come, they'll give you a beautiful face, nice smile, beautiful. Then when you're in there, it's something different. So he has no control over that. That's what the problem is who you bring in as a tenant. You have no control over actually who's coming in, how respectful they're going to be. And that's what I hear from the gentleman who owns the building next door. Next thing you know, he has 3 or 4 guys in there, living, coming in and out, driving cars, no parking.
Okay, thank you, sir. ZBA 0218, Spring Street, 49 Spring Street.
Madam Chair, just for the record, this applicant is also before the planning board right now, and the planning board is the agency on this matter.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This project is in
Can you
49.
talk into that mic because she needs to get that?
Okay,
Is it turned on? Yeah, good.
try to be a little bit louder. This property is 49 Spring Street. You waiting for-
Yeah, I don't have to say it, I know it's an empty lot.
Okay, it's an empty lot on 49 Spring Street, and as Glenn said, we are in front of the planning board. We're proposing it's a mixed-use building, a 4-story mixed-use building. It is in the BC zone, so the first floor will be retail, and we have 3 additional floors of apartments. The total units is we have is 12 residential apartments and 2 retail spaces. The location of the property and then the BC zone is separate from all the issues that all the other lots in this area do. So we do require variances, parking variances, and also we are in the proximity of the aqueduct. So going through the
What's the lot
requirements.
size? What's the lot size on this property?
4,408 square feet.
And is that are we doing this portion thing again?
No, there's no density issues, we allow to have the 12 units.
He stands, I think.
Yeah. Going as for the zoning requirements for the area variance, is this an undesirable use for this empty lot? We believe it's not, it's a continuation, we follow the architectural guidelines, the ASEAN architectural guidelines, we maintain the same facade. We have gone back and forth with the planning board and the ARB as to the finishes of the building and the shape. Can we achieve this by any other methods? Due to its location, its proximity to the bus stop, it's impossible to create an internal parking lot in this, for this building. Also, for the aqueduct, the proximity to the aqueduct, the 25-foot setback that is required as per the ASEAN code is the intent of this requirement is meant to protect the aqueduct. In actuality, the aqueduct in this portion of Austin does not run underneath the aqueduct. It runs on, where's that, Maple Street? On Spring Street. And also the.
No, it doesn't,
Yeah,
because you go right by the firehouse across the street.
There's two different issues. I have the maps from the New York State, State Park Commission. I don't know if you attached that to your application. The map shows some idiosyncrasies with the actual
Sir, give your
aqueduct.
name and
Oh, I
address.
apologize. My name is Robert Corky, 11 Lakeview Road, Ossining. I'm the attorney for the owner. Thank you. Again, I'm sorry, I apologize. We did some investigation of the aqueduct from when we went before the planning committee. I thought that the maps were presented to you as well. They're in the planning committee file. I obtained the map of the entire Croton Aqueduct system.
Sir, would you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry, I thought it was loud enough. I obtained a copy of the map of the entire system from the Historic Aqueduct Historic Park Commission, which shows the aqueduct right from the reservoir to the Bronx, where it runs. It was particularly interesting because it deviates from the path. The path was obtained by the state after the aqueduct was created. And they created this park from the Bronx to Croton. But the actual aqueduct itself does not run under the path, which I found kind of interesting. It actually deviates at a number of places in Ossining. And I'll leave this or will submit the maps to you, but it actually shows that as the aqueduct where we are on Spring Street, on Waller, it takes a turn, it goes under Spring and back up Maple and then continues through the housing farther up and going on. If it deviates further at different places on the aqueduct through Ossining, it deviates south of us under the parks, and it makes major deviations in Tarrytown and Irvington. So that the path of the aqueduct, the actual park, is not the same as the line of the aqueduct itself. These are from state documents. This isn't mine. I'd be happy to provide all those to you. So this issue did come up with planning because of the issue in the zoning about the 25-foot setback. And so we did some investigation on that. I asked first the planning, was there a reason that was put into the zoning? And then no one really knew at the last planning board meeting as to why. We surmised it was to make sure that any excavation for construction would not do any harm to the aqueduct.
It's required that you leave a path for the aqueduct. It's next to the firehouse too, right?
Yeah, but we're not encroaching in the path.
We're not on this, the proposed.
We're gonna have to check that out.
I absolutely give you all that information.
Okay.
However, and then I further went and I spoke to the State Park Commission representatives for the area. Mr. Doherty had asked, are there any restrictions that the state of New York or the Historic State Park Commission imposes for setbacks to the aqueduct? And they said no.
Right.
The requirement is that you do nothing to interfere with the actual use of the aqueduct.
Okay, so we'll have to check that, the aqueduct, the part out. Do you have anything else to talk about?
As to the aqueduct, again, I did go out last Friday to take some pictures of the aqueduct. I sent copies around. And we have a board here. I thought they were a little bigger that we were going to get set. And what I did was to start on one side, which is Maple. There's, for whatever reason, there's a dumpster on the aqueduct at Maple. So looking north from Klein's property, you see the dumpster there. Looking south, you see in this picture here, you can see that on the south side by Waller, there's a gate which is prohibiting access to the aqueduct, which I found kind of strange. I did ask the state representative if they put the gate up, and they said no. It is locked, and you can see from the picture in here as well that whoever has been using the aqueduct cut the fence, and they actually climb over the fence to get access to the aqueduct. So it's not something that's readily accessible. This is facing south. I took a few pictures just showing the line of the aqueduct back there, you can see that there's no uniformity with setbacks along the aqueduct between Waller and Maple. Some of the properties, I didn't have a survey, nothing staked. They look like we're actually on the aqueduct. Some are set back, there are fences, there's a chain link fence on one side, I don't know who that belongs to. But you can see that there's no uniformity, there's no uniform imposition of the setback requirement, and there doesn't seem to be any maintenance of the aqueduct to allow for the purposes of it, so that in effect, I don't see, we don't think that there's anything that we have in our proposal which would impact its current use, and we hope that it would somehow improve its current use. One of the pictures shows looking from my client's property onto Spring Street, which allows you to see the aqueduct onto Spring. So the setback issue, I'm not sure about the meaning of it or its intent. I will give you the maps. I apologize for them not being available tonight.
Okay.
So I think we give the board a narrative, I don't know if you.
Okay, I read the narrative. Let's talk about parking.
Okay.
You seem to think that because the lots aren't full, maybe during the day, that should justify you getting a variance on parking?
Well,
The lot across the street on St. Paul's.
there's two lots, the lot on St. Paul.
They're both municipal lots.
Yeah, they're both municipal lots.
Right.
And we do think that, with tug parking and being a big difference between evening parking and day parking, and the retail stores will only require 9 parking spaces during the day. We created mostly one-bedroom apartments. We have the proximity to the train station, and this is
So you're supplying 0 parking?
yeah.
The parking issue is obviously a difficult issue. That's for everything that's there. My client purchased the property last year from the prior owner who bought the property in 1985 on the tax liens from Barbara Bates, the deed from 1985. So it laid, nothing was happening up to that point. They lost their property on the tax liens, prior owner. The village took title. They had a sale. The prior owner, an Ossining resident, purchased it in '85. So it lay vacant from '85 to now, over 30 years. Nothing happening with it. So we have a property that, if you impose all of the parking requirements, restrictions on it, will lay vacant for another 30 years. It's a difficult property. It's next to a bus stop, as you know, on Spring Street. It's not the prettiest spot in the world. Developing the property will need a variance for parking. Developing the property, I believe, enhances the presentation of Spring Street. My client owns the neighboring property. It's well-maintained and cared for, and this would be done the same way. So that the parking issue is real. I did take the opportunity to look at the Ossining Downtown Redevelopment Working Committee report as to what they said about parking. And they quote them and said that Ossining faces similar downtown parking challenges as neighboring communities, but seemingly manages them in an inefficient manner. Downtown Ossining has approximately 600 spaces, which is about the same for its size as other communities. However, they go on to the parking and the pricing of the parking. It's a separate issue than we're here to talk about. But it does go on to say, approximately 40 to 50 commuter tags along Water Street and Central Avenue are marginally used. Similarly, pocket-sized lots on Spring Street and Academy and Maple Avenue and South Highland regularly have unused tag spots. So I think it's acknowledged by the village in their plan that there are spots available. So this is not something we're just making up on our own. The spots are there. Question is, do we want to leave it vacant or do something with it? And to do something with it, we have to build a building, obviously. To make the building financially feasible, JB did an analysis, it's attached to his application. The analysis is using, he can speak to it better than I, standard costs, standard projections for the property, and to make an economically feasible property, that's the number of units that are required. The 12 units with the 2 commercial. Otherwise, we have a situation of something that's not economically feasible, and it will remain as a vacant property for whenever, how many other years.
Madam Chair, could I just interject for 1 second? It appears from the calculations that it looks like they use the NC district parking requirements instead of the VC, so they actually require less parking than what they've stipulated. Because in the VC district, they only need one space for units with 1 bedrooms, which would bring their calculation down to 6 from 9, and 1.5 spaces for units with 2 or more bedrooms, which would bring their 2-bedroom calculation down to 9 instead of 12, and thus reduce it to 15.
Can I just add one thing? I just have a quick question. When you did the calculations for the apartments, is that livable?
Yes,
Not habitable?
right.
Because the VC district, they have to be
Yes.
minimum habitable.
Yeah.
But just looking at the layout, the map doesn't,
Yeah, because we're not counting.
you have to take out bathrooms, closets, hallways,
and
kitchens.
closets, yeah. But you count the kitchen, the bedroom.
Yeah, because on the 1 bedroom, doing the numbers, they don't look like they come to those amounts.
We will double check that.
On a related matter, I saw early on that a letter was submitted by Superintendent Sanchez to the board making a comment.
It was the planning board, actually.
Plain, I'm sorry, so it got to you as well. One of the comments by, and I respect Superintendent Sanchez, my kids all graduated from the Austin system, I know it's a wonderful system. It's an asset to the community, we're not looking to do anything that would be anything detrimental to that. One of the things he raised was the issue of abatements and new construction, and the abatements and how the school district doesn't benefit by new construction frequently in Austin. We're not looking for any abatements. We're looking to pay the taxes. Interestingly, the taxes now are $3,000. Based on my client's property next door of similar size, it's over $50,000. So there'll be a new tax source available to Austin if this project goes forward. So it's a development that will enhance the community, it's money in the coffers of the village through the taxes. So those are considerations. In addition, my client, as I mentioned, owns the building next door, has several other properties in Austin. His experience is that he has young professionals or people with 1 or 2 bedrooms, but mostly not kids. He's got a number of apartments. He only has very few children, 2 of them are his grandchildren. But there's not been a big impact on the school system by the apartments. It's not been in his experience. It's not built as a family environment. It's built for a living for basically single and professional individuals. In addition to adding to the housing available in the village, there will be affordable housing added in the village because of this by regulation. So that'll be available as another asset, which isn't here now, and isn't going to be here if there's just a vacant lot.
Right?
That's enough, I could probably take.
I know you could. Is there anyone that's here to speak on 49 Spring Street? Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, you need to go home and do your homework. We need to have much more information on the aqueduct. We need to have the right parking figures on here. And you need to make sure that your inhabitable space is correct in your calculations. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Anybody else have questions? Okay, ZBA 0318, 175 Croton Avenue.
Ready?
Hi, sir.
Hi, good evening.
Your
My name
name?
is William Simeo Farid, this architect. I'm representing the owner of the property. So this is a new
You
application.
promise to tell the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do. I'm gonna go through the project since it's a new application.
Yes,
Um,
please do.
So what we're proposing is, I'm gonna start with the actual structure and then get into the site plan. Is a two-family building. On the ground floor, we're gonna provide 2 separate garages, and the second and third floor are gonna be identical units, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. On the ground floor, like I said, there's a 2-car garage towards the street, a 1-car garage in the back, and they're gonna share a common entrance with a laundry and mechanical room. The existing site is a vacant piece of property right now on Croton Avenue. Right now, it's being used as an access into the adjacent property. There's this structure here is, I guess, a Victorian-type 3-family structure, and the existing driveway goes through our property over here and into the back where they have a garage and a couple of parking spots. When the building was
Excuse me,
constructed...
so this driveway here is your property?
Right.
Is the...
No, the next one, I think.
I'm
The
sorry?
one on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, here, this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So whose driveway is this?
That's our driveway, and it's providing parking or access to the parking on the adjacent lot. So there's really 2 lots that I'm
So
showing
you
here.
have 2 driveways next to each other. That's part of your property. That's part of the property of the owner.
No, the adjacent driveway is the other.
Oh, that's what I was asking, yeah.
Yeah, it's next to Peach.
Yeah, right here.
I don't know, I think I provided some.
Yeah,
We have plenty of pictures.
This is, but just for the,
Yeah.
this is his, but there was.
Oh, he said
2
that it
lots,
was-
Yeah, at one point, and it shows that on the.
But as part of his conversation was, he said that the driveway was supplying. Okay, that's all I was trying to clarify.
The existing driveway is on the vacant lot that's providing access to the adjacent property on the left side to the back.
Oh, I see.
So like I was saying, when the structure was built in the 1900s, I was told it was 2 brothers that owned both properties. One brother didn't build anything on his, and the new owners happen to be brothers as well. So we are going to keep access. We're going to relocate the existing driveway further west, and we're going to provide access to our parking spot in the back, but also maintain their, meaning the adjacent property, parking that they have and the garage that they have in the back, so we don't need to address any issues on that situation there. We're here today because we're asking for a variance for the front yard setback. The property, I believe, is 7,200 square feet right now. We meet pretty much all requirements for zoning other than the front yard. The front yard maximum setback is 15 feet. We're proposing 34 for a few reasons. One is the existing structure to the left, as I mentioned before, is set back pretty far from the existing property line, from the sidewalk. And to me, setting it back just gives it a better, gives it an open space in the front, maintains the open area. If we were to bring it up towards the street, we lose the structure visually. We won't really see it. It'll be tucked away in the back. And it's really not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood if we pull it to the front. Also, another reason for moving it back that where we have it lined up is to provide access to the to the proposed garages that we have underneath the structure itself. If we pulled it forward, you wouldn't be able to make the turn to get in. Another reason is, although we don't provide any commercial space, the 2-car garage in the front that we're discussing right now, in the future, if this owner or the next owner decides to convert it to a commercial space, then you'll have additional spots in the front yard for that spot, and the back parking would be for the residential. The residential requirements right now are 4 total parking spaces. I think we're providing 8, so they would have enough to convert the the proposed 2-car garage, if they wanted to in the future, to commercial space. The structure is going to be a modular building. I don't know if I provided a rendering from the modular company. I have one.
We have to come before the parking in the front.
Well, that was the discussion we had.
Yeah, if he wants to keep this, he would, or he could dispose of this because he has enough parking.
The
and
code
not
says
have
that
You're not allowed to have.
can't have
residential-
parking in the front yard.
Oh, really?
So, but you have 5 spaces without the front yard, so you'd still.
We still meet it if we don't have.
3 in the back or 2 in the?
3 in the back and
3 in the back and
interior.
3, so you'd still have 6.
Yeah.
Unless you're trying to get 8, then you'd have to get variance.
No, I thought it'd be ideal to have it in the front just for future, but it may change when they do decide to convert it, but, so we'll remove the ones in the front. We don't need them, I just thought it was nice to add additional parking in the front. We'll leave it as green space, which actually would improve the whole look of the 2 lots. Actually, adjoining, not the structure below, but the other one is Ossining Pizzeria, which is also parking in the front.
It's a business.
Right, in the residential
home.
zone. In the residential zone.
Been there forever.
But we're complying, I mean, we don't need the parking in the front, that's just an idea that I thought would be a good one, but I guess I didn't know we're not allowed to park. All right, I think that is our project in a nutshell. I'll take any questions that the board may have.
Do we have any questions right now? Is there anybody here to speak on this 175 Croton Avenue?
Yes, I just have 2 questions.
So, you can sit down. You can sit down. And please give your name and address.
Sure. My name is Josh Levine. I live at 8 Charles Place. And just 2 questions.
Do you promise to tell the truth under penalty of perjury, sir?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, sir.
This building is going to be going up on the vacant lot?
Right.
Okay. Just one other thing. In the notice that I got about this meeting, it shows the property. I forget the full thing, but it's, dock 17, I believe, is that what it was? As the property, but I think.
Lot 17.
But the vacant lot is actually
18.
18, okay.
Oh, that's all you wanted to tell us, is that the vacant lot is 18?
Actually, that was told that to the homeowner, mentioned his tax papers had it wrong.
Okay. So you would continue to leave the house back here, but without the 2 parking spots in the front, correct?
Right, our idea is to leave the house where we're.
How do you get into the garages? Through the side here, through the,
In the entrance to the new house is on the long side,
okay,
and so are the 2 entrances to the garages.
so the house is sideways to the street?
Yeah, and the street is facing, that's the view, can you bring it up there? That's the side view facing the existing Victorian, this one here.
Right.
And then the front view, or the street view, I should say, is the next slide. Well, this one here. There it is. The one to the right is the front.
So the only variance that you're looking for is to make the front yard bigger than it is?
Right.
It's a 2-family?
It's a 2-family, identical apartments, one on the 2nd and one on the 3rd floor. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths.
Have you gone before the planning board already?
No, we're going after this.
And it's a prefab?
The top 2 floors will be prefab. The ground floor is going to be field built, stick built.
So the driveway between the 2 properties are gonna be a common driveway?
It's going to be a common driveway, serving the existing parking and garage and the back new parking.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, ZBA 0418, 57 North Malcolm.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Steven Santiago. I live and own 57 North Malcolm Street, Nassau, New York.
Do you promise to tell the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here this afternoon. I'm proposing to finish my basement area of my home. In order to access the lower level of the basement, I would like to construct a new stairway from an existing mudroom off of my dining room. The existing mudroom structure has an existing side yard setback of 2.8 feet. In order to provide this stairway to the basement, it has to be built in accordance with current building codes. Wall insulation, railings, stairways, etc. It will be necessary to reduce this setback to 2.2 feet. And combine side yard to 11.8 feet. This will require a 9.8 foot variance for the one side yard and a 16.2 foot variance for the combined side yards. Alternative locations were investigated, both on the interior and the exterior of the dwelling. The interior staircase would diminish the square footage and will require the loss of one of the designated rooms on the first floor. And the exterior stair was found to work best to the side yard, where minimum setback variance will be required. I feel that this reduction in the side yard setback will not be excessive and will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood.
So you want to make a rec room in your basement that you have to go outside to get into?
Well, I was told by my architect that I need two means of egress from the basement if I wanted to finish it as a, proposed rec room or, family room or anything like that. I also wanted to add a bathroom down there maybe in the future, but I was told that in order for me to get a means of egress, that would work the best because I have a Bilco door exit out the back. The one side, I have my driveway, and on the side where I'm asking for the setback, I already have a existing bump out. So basically, I'm just asking to extend the bump out so that I can make stairs going into the basement from the side yard. And this way, I would have two means of egress in and out of the basement.
Is there a two-family house?
It's a one-family house, ma'am.
So at this point right now, you're only trying to finish it off as a rec room, not the bathroom, and not anything else in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anybody here to speak on 57 North Malcolm?
I just want to ask a couple questions in regard to that.
Just remember you're still under,
My concerns is that I'm not sure if the gentleman is trying to backdoor in regards to getting tenant downstairs in the basement by having a door access on the side of his house. I believe there's an access in the back of the house. Two means of egress would be your back door and your front door. To have one that's going from the back door and the side door, and then later on is trying to create a means of rental, and it's a one family right now. That's my concern. Because what's two families or three families right now in the neighborhood should sustain that. Anything more than that is getting crazier. So that's just my question to you, is that if it's going to be something that's going to be a side door for right now to get downstairs, then you're back trying to put the bathroom in, then you're back trying to, next thing you're trying to change the demographic by backdooring it. That's my concern, because it's a very serious issue on Malcolm Street. And it's getting crazy, that's why I went.
And there's nothing
Back
on
in
Malcolm
there.
Street that allows basement apartments, right?
Well, you're allowed on Malcolm Street to have a two-family house.
But you're not allowed to have basement apartment.
That's not in the code that way. It just says
It's a
two-family.
two-family, it doesn't specify that, would be the NC district that has that specification.
But I would say this, you can create a means of egress in a basement recreation room, not necessarily has to be a door, you can make an egress window. There are various different ways you can do it, it's not necessarily, it's proposed in this gentleman's plan to do a door, that's what he's proposed with his architect, but that's not the only way you can do it. Just by code regulations, I'm just letting you know.
And just for the record, there's no kitchen proposed in this proposal, so.
Well, that's just my, because there's different ways of going about doing things. And you start one step and another step, and.
Is there anyone else here to speak on 57 North Malcolm? Did you want to say something else, sir?
I just wanted to address the gentleman's question. He has a point on what he's stating. If I were to ever decide to try and turn it into a two-family house or put an additional apartment downstairs, I would never go the back door. I'm gonna come to you guys, ask for permission, come the same way I came. Right now, I'm proposing to do that. One, because I get a lot of water in my basement. You know, I've owned the house for 4 years now. As he's saying, I'm trying to make the house look better, little by little. I have access into the basement right now from in between the dining room and living room. If you go in there and you look at it, it's not up to code. The stairs are dangerous. There's no way to bring them to code because, as I stated before, if I try to bring them to code, according to your height, because you have to have a minimum height. I work as a carpenter, and in the union, you have to have a minimum height, minimum width and stairs. I would have to put a landing somewhere down there and make a turn, which is gonna just eat up tons of space down there, not including the oil tank that's down there, the boiler, and everything else.
And you live in the property, right? Jim?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody that we haven't heard from tonight that might not know why they're not here, or?
Can I just make one
Yes.
more question? So, the staircase that you have now, that's from the first floor to get to the basement, that's the one that you're changing to an exterior staircase?
Yes.
So, because by code, you have to have a combining interior staircase between the first floor apartment and the basement to begin with, to be able to make a recreation room. You have to have, essentially what you're doing is making the finished basement an extension of the first floor apartment, so you can't eliminate that staircase.
Well,
Does he have to bring that staircase up to code?
Well, no, he can leave it, and if it's existing and it's not up to code, that's fine. You only have to bring it to code if you're going to alter the stairs and do any work to it. If it's an existing staircase, it can stay as is, even because it's pre-existing. And if it's a matter of getting a means of egress, like I said, there's other measures you can do so. You can have an egress window with a window well, and that suffices as an egress from the basement. Because the code does say you have to have, if you're gonna finish your basement, you have to have a means of egress, but that can be accomplished multiple ways. But one of the things you can't do is remove the interior connection between the first floor and the basement.
But isn't if I'm coming out of my dining room into my mudroom, right? Existing mudroom that was extended into the basement, I'm going into the basement essentially from the first floor into the basement. I never went outside.
As long as it's
you understand?
enclosed within the two.
That's what I'm saying. I'm proposing, that's what, I want to enclose the whole mudroom down into the staircase.
Understood, I wasn't sure if it was, I could see it was enclosed.
Yeah, yeah,
It's still,
definitely.
essentially, it's still an interior connection.
Exactly.
Because you said it would be your second You would have two.
Exactly.
Okay. Is there anybody else here to discuss anything tonight? There's people in the back that didn't talk.
Can I ask you a question? There's a, in the back of the house, there's entrance in?
To Mike?
Yeah.
Sir, do you have one more question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
It's
okay.
just-
Because remember when I started and I said, don't have discussions? in
You're
the
right,
hearing room?
I apologize, sorry. Isn't there a entrance in the back of the house to go downstairs? Because my belief, I knew the woman that owned it before, there's an entrance in the back coming from outside in, and there's an entrance going
Like
to the
one of those
basement coming
doors
from the
like
kitchen.
that? Like-
Right, I
yeah.
think there's, I
You know,
believe there was is a shed that overhead that you can go down, and then inside, I think from the kitchen, there is an entrance way that goes down to the basement. My only concern is that, is just, well, you mentioned that, you're gonna backdoor, maybe you misunderstood me, I don't think you're gonna backdoor the board. It's just that it's a way in which you're getting your job accomplished by taking a different approach. So later on, a year or two from now, a year from now, you can say you have an entryway to go downstairs, and then try to convert it to like a rental. And that's just my concern in the neighborhood, but it's already getting bad.
I think your neighborhood, you know, from your concerns that you've expressed tonight.
Yes.
There's other issues that are happening over there, like overcrowding and stuff like that, that should not jeopardize any single homeowner.
No
property
single,
owner.
right,
That-
and you're absolutely correct.
You know what I mean? So if the issues are bigger than each individual property owner, then we can't bind a property owner to other issues that are being addressed by the building department, correct?
No, and I agree with you fully, that's what I'm just speaking to this gentleman here in front of the board in regards to that.
Right.
If it's a one family, absolutely.
Right.
One family is what is needed in the neighborhood right now. Anything more than that becomes a problem.
Mhm.
The only reason why I'm speaking to him about it because it's just a way in which you try to accomplish something by getting later on it done. And that was just my,
Well, I guess what he said and what she's saying is that even if that is in fact his intent, he'd have to come before the board
Right.
anyway, and by
Right.
then you could voice your
Right.
opinion, and I would imagine if a lot of people feel like you, they would come down too and voice their opinion. But I
No.
mean,
I agree, but I'm just speaking my voice on
Yeah.
that matter, even though it falls maybe on deaf ears a little bit, but I'm just stating it at the board. I
Young
understand
man would be
fully.
a lovely contact for the building. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak tonight? Okay, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
move to close?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so now what happens is the board will discuss each topic, not necessarily to make a decision on said topic, but to discuss each topic that we spoke about tonight that was here and didn't get adjourned, as we move forward. Okay, Baker property on Croton Avenue. Sir, did you want to postpone the decision, if there was gonna be one tonight?
I don't know, I thought I would listen to your conversation, because you said you were gonna talk about it.
Okay,
And I would
then
think that
decide.
issue through, because you can appreciate that without one board member here, it might be more difficult to get approval than with a full board, that's all.
Okay.
Can I, if there is any conversation to be had, can I listen?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I didn't want to have, because we have such a lengthy agenda, that if you were going to call for it anyway, then I would, so do we have any comments from the board on the Croton Avenue? Now, Bob, you're pretty new on this, we wanted to catch you up on it. You understand what property we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And,
Madam Chair, could I just, for the board, go over what the requirements are with specifically as to area
Thanks.
variances so that it's understood here? The law, which is what Lynn quoted before, which is the village law, but it's actually part of the village, that was the village's zoning code, but the village's law on area variances is very clear that what the zoning board has to do is engage in what's simply called a balancing test. They have to determine, they have to weigh the benefit to the applicant against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community, should the variance be granted. And then you have the various elements that you have to think about. First, whether there is an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. Second, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than by an area variance. Third, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Fourth, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect on impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the board, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of an area variance. That becomes important for a later discussion that we have with regard to a use variance on the issue of self-created difficulty. In terms of the evidence to be looked at, it's important that the board is able to use its own observations of the properties as one of the bases for its evidence in terms of making the determination as to whether or not an area variance should be granted. And here we're talking about 4 specific area variances that are being looked at. Board should know that in terms of granting variances, they can also grant variances subject to condition if they deem that appropriate. They can also grant variances that are not as extensive as those that have been in fact requested by the applicant. But the issue is has substantial evidence been presented? Have they been able to demonstrate those particular elements? But the zoning board has to make a determination, and that's the balancing. Even if you were to find, for example, these are substantial variances, you may find that it will not have a particularly undesirable impact on the particular neighborhood or community, or that it will not have an environmental, which also includes traffic, which was one of the issues that was discussed tonight. So that's the balancing test that comes in here. I should point out for the board, since we just have 4 members here tonight, that if a vote were taken tonight and it were a 2-2 vote, that would be considered a denial. It would not be a no action, it would be a denial. That's important in terms of if the applicant wishes to come back to this board in the future. So I just wanted to lay that out to the board.
Do you have any comments? Marcel?
Well, I was hoping the gentleman who got up and said that the property was close to his.
Can you talk into the mic and so that people can, you know?
Yeah, I was hoping that the gentleman who's.
I don't know if it's on.
No, it's not on actually.
It's a switch.
Button on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe somebody here could answer this question. The gentleman who had gotten up and said that the property was extremely close to his property and his family has been managing the other property for quite a while. I just wanted to know how close to this property is this proposed property?
The driveway is right
there.
right next to it.
If I can, I think I can, I don't mean to be argumentative, just elucidate on this issue.
Well, I'm going to tell you, sir, we're going to discuss this as a board now.
That's fine,
Yeah.
Okay.
I was trying to help answer the
Okay,
question.
all right, all right. Okay, yeah. And there is no other way for the property we're in discussion with tonight to exit anywhere else but onto Croton Avenue. Okay, because remember the property goes up, and it goes like into it's almost like a little hat, you know, it goes up into a point.
So, just for the board's reference.
Marcel, that's the property.
That's it, okay.
You see it?
Yes.
So this is Clinton right here,
Mm-hmm.
this is Croton right here.
And where's Mr. Fishbine's property?
This would be Mr. Fishbine's property. And this is the Valvoline, this is the Walgreens, this is a mixed use building, this is OVAC.
And see the line right there,
Which
see the
one?
line in the road, that, stop me with the
Okay,
please.
sorry.
The line in the road is where you stop because of the ambulance coming around the corner, because the OVAC is over here. No, way down there.
That
That's where
line.
you stop on the red light. So,
So that's Mr. Fishbine's at the bottom of the property there.
right.
Right.
So that's what it was talking about. Right. Bob, you're pretty new, I know you're getting thrown into this, you know.
No, I understand the traffic concerns and the fact that they did move the driveway to the other side, you know, to me is definitely better than having it right jammed up against the other driveway that is always you know,
Always.
lovely to navigate at times. And my opinion, that stop line should be back behind that, because what happens is it jams up. So if someone
Well, then
doesn't
you'll be on
pay-
the next block.
Huh?
You'll be on the next block.
Well,
you
the
know.
point being is, you know, it leaves it open so people coming down Croton Avenue to make that left turn into the property for 70 Croton
Right.
or 68, you know, it leaves it open, but that's besides the fact. It is a very small piece of property. It does seem like a relatively push to the envelope piece, building that they want to put on here.
And parking.
And the parking, yeah.
Yeah, I echo those concerns about traffic and the lot size just being too small for such a big project. And that's where I'm at right now.
Let me just make one point regarding the parking, the traffic, if I can. There was, and there were prior diagrams with regard to traffic studies that were done, and that was something that was before the planning board. It is an environmental issue that this board can look at. I just wanted to make it.
Well, part of
that was
what
there.
you brought up before was the fact that we can use our own experiences, and since we live here and live in that what happens there in that traffic already without having people trying to get out of other driveways,
Right.
because I have seen people getting out of the driveway from the Clinton Towers, I won't say it's anybody, you know, they wait there 10 minutes sometimes, you know. And in reality, I don't know if they have it, but they can wiggle around and go out onto Clinton too, so, you know. But you can't do that in that property there. I just find it, I find 20 parking spots and a 12 apartment building on that property. I understand that, I read the traffic studies. I've read traffic studies for many projects. Sometimes they're done, you know, at the convenience, but I just find the traffic issue one of my major concerns with this.
Okay, and again, that's only one of the 5 factors.
Right.
So there has to be a consideration by the board, although there does not have to be specific evidence as to each factor. At the end of the day, you have to have evidence which would support whatever your determination is. So, and on the issue as to what else could be built, the important thing to note on the issue of feasibility, it's what could he feasibly build for what he wants without a variance. And I don't know if there's been any demonstration that anything could be built there without the area. I'm just pointing out that that's one of the requirements. So when and if this board takes a determination, when and if there's a resolution, there has to be a point by point in terms of
Well,
those factors.
let me ask you one question too, then. If they, just because you can build 16 units, because you take a proportion of a size of a lot of this, and they went down to 12, I was looking at it more of, yes, you can come back and get a variance for a smaller building, which then would require less parking, less cars going in and out of this very, very small plot. I mean, is that an answer that you can give? It's not black and white, it's not no variance or this variance. I mean, in this particular case, you know.
Well, here though, I believe, at least I think the applicant has said this, 2 of the variances that he's requested, he would request under any circumstances, regardless of what he was constructing.
Right.
And so I think in that case, there's nothing, the feasibility is that he couldn't put anything else up there without those variances. As to those particular 2. There are 2 other variances they talked about.
But by looking at the factors, we could determine that a smaller project may, under the balancing test, may pass muster, whereas with the bigger project, it's not going to do that regardless of the same variance.
Again, you got to look at all the different factors. You also, one of the issues, what would it do to the neighborhood itself, which is a consideration. And other than, I think, Mr. Fishbein, and obviously your own observations, that's one of the key factors, because that's the first factor. They're all weighed equally. But it's obviously something at the end of the day you have to consider, because as I said, the basic part of the balancing test is the benefit to the applicant against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. That's the test. And then you have the factors that have to be considered there, and that's what you would have to look at.
Well, and they have owned the property since 1984. Was it 84 or 86? I apologize if I'm wrong.
86. They had 86. They got half the property, and then in 95 they got the remaining half.
Okay. So, so yes, they've supposedly come, not to this board. This is a fairly new board. In fact, every member on this board is here like a little over a year or less. But it is, to me, it is a creation, because if I had a property and I wanted to do something with it, before 2009, when the zoning changed or anything, I would fight on and get something done with that property.
That I understand. I should point out, though, on the issue of self-created difficulty, where the zoning code changes after you become the owner, it's not a self-created difficulty. So, so in that sense, it's not the circumstance as will be with a different application we have coming up here, but in this case, that's not a self-created difficulty.
Okay. Do you want us to take a vote?
I'm going to ask the board to defer voting to the next meeting, hopefully to have a full complement of the board. Perhaps further discussion, perhaps not, that's up to you, but we'd like to defer to your next zoning board meeting for that purpose.
Okay, that is granted, and I just want you to understand that we talk at this board. We don't talk, we're not having any other meetings. We don't have any executive meetings or anything like that, so I want you to know that we're being very honest with you as to what we do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ZBA 2717, 182 Spring Street. This is where it is, you would like to reestablish, this is a use variance. We're gonna give you.
Let me go through this if I might, because as the chairperson notes, use variance is a much more difficult thing to obtain with regard to a particular request. The statute provides that in order to get a use variance, the applicant must show the following. First, that they cannot realize a reasonable return, provided that the lack of return is substantial, as demonstrated by competent financial evidence, and that goes to some of the questions that Member Meyer was asking earlier, that the alleged hardship relating to the property in question is unique and does not apply to a substantial portion of the district or neighborhood, meaning that it must refer to the particular piece of property that's involved, not overall, that the requested use variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, again, this is a T-zone, and finally, that the alleged hardship has not been self-created. This is critical here because if the hardship is considered to be self-created, the application for the use variance must be denied, unlike an area variance where it's only one of the factors. I should point out to the board, the first thing I talked about, the reasonable rate of return, that's essentially what's referred to as the dollars and cents proof that has to be presented. There were discussions, I know, by planning with this applicant about getting more financial information. We don't have purchase price in here, we don't have mortgages, we have none of that information. But I'd like to just deal with the issue of the self-creation of the hardship. The applicant notes in his, or the applicant's architect has put into the application, in his, I think, fourth paragraph, he first states the hardship was not self-created, but then later on in that same paragraph writes, the new owner had full knowledge of the circumstance when he purchased the building, but did not have a full understanding of the financial commitment the building would require for compliance. Not knowing what the financial issue might be after you buy it, even though you are aware that there is, in fact, in this case, the non-conforming use is over, is in fact a self-created hardship. And the cases are clear on that. I do understand from what the applicant has indicated that he has, in essence, a Plan B, which is not before this board, because he's really just asking for the use variance. But I think there is a deficiency in the numbers that were provided, putting aside the issue of the self-created. But the self-created, I think, creates a significant issue here because it does appear that the individual was aware of it, and it was just that after the fact, it became a financially difficult situation for him.
Do you have any questions? Marcel?
Well, I'm sort of balancing what you're saying and taking into account his point, the benefits of the community. I think he mentioned the closest laundromat was about a mile and a half away. Half a mile away.
If that.
Yeah.
It's down on the, it's
Down
just,
by Macker.
yeah, it's right by one of the, that's property.
Well, when we're looking at a use variance, if it fails any of the factors,
Right.
it fails.
And by
Correct.
default?
Yeah.
If this is a self-created hardship, the use variance has to be denied.
Okay.
As compared with area where it can be a factor considered but not determinative,
Yeah.
here it would be determinative. The other factors you could look at, but this is one of those circumstances that, because you don't want to basically change the use in a particular zone. So here, and as I went through the timing before, in Member Foster, in response to your questions, it was last as a laundromat in 2014. This board determined that non-conforming use had not expired as of June of 15, but there was no further presentation by the former owner. And as I said, I believe it went into foreclosure, it was then purchased in foreclosure, and then it was ultimately sold by the bank to the current owner. But it's been well more than 1 year since that non-conforming use has not been in effect, which is also what our code provides for.
Sir, can I come up and speak, or?
No.
No, good.
Also, one of the other things was that at that time, the board determined that it was a hardship because it was caused by a fire. So they granted, I believe, to extend the time.
But it was an
to do
extension, it was, you know.
But it wasn't that he shut the business down, it was caused by a fire.
However, it was an extension.
Right, it was an
Okay.
extension.
And when you do your due diligence, if you had an extension and you know that the rules are 1 year, you know, so you're coming back to a use variance, and we very, very, very rarely give use.
That was just to explain why they did it at that time.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I believe denial. So I'd like to have a motion to deny the use variance.
Motion to deny? Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So you guys, excuse me, so you just denied it?
Yes.
So what do we do now? Knock the building down?
So we're gonna go on to our next item, ZBA 0118.
You can see the planning board.
0118 Hudson, 65 North Malcolm. Applicant is looking to make an existing single-family resident converted into two-family residence. This is the gentleman that came before us.
No.
I'm sorry.
You just had a.
Did I skip somebody?
No,
No.
No, you're
65
correct.
North Malcolm. was
Yeah.
just to correct the,
Just to correct the zoning worksheet.
But the gentleman had a we did have a comment from the audience on that, and so what we did was we asked them to correct the, so the only other question that I had on that one was the size of the first floor apartment. Remember, it was gonna be smaller because of the,
because he was gonna,
because of the porch?
leave the open front
He
porch
was-
rather than close it.
Right.
Yeah, so he proposes to, that it'll be 597.8 square feet, so he's gonna need a variance of 202.2 square feet. In the existing condition, it's only 851.1 square feet, and yes, he was proposing to put the porch back on, which is why, and pull off the existing enclosed porch that they enclosed, because they hadn't enclosed it,
Right.
and they wanted to bring back that character.
Does anyone want to discuss that at all? Marcel? Go to Shukes out at the end, so you know, you get called first. I'll start at this side, please.
Let me see, made some notes here, let me check real quick. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Again, Bob, we're throwing you into the fire this evening. It's,
Keyword fire. No, I don't have any questions.
okay.
No, I have no questions. I mean, I understand the gentleman's concern about overcrowding in the neighborhood, but I don't think it affects this particular project.
In this particular project, they are supplying 4 parking spots for their parking. And while we do totally understand where the gentleman is coming from as a neighborhood problem, we also want to enhance the neighborhood, you know, as in this particular property. And if he is talking to someone about becoming an owner occupied, then that's even better. You know, the soccer coach, I think it was, this was a soccer coach.
Wrestling.
Wrestling, sorry, some sport. Okay, so what do you think?
Motion to approve?
Just for clarity,
Yeah.
he's requesting 2 variances.
Okay.
One is the increase in impervious surface coverage to build parking in the rear, which is a 5.7% increase over what's required for the square footage of both floors.
And then the other ones were just to clean up this.
The square footage, so those are the 2 variances.
Right, and again, since this is an area variance, it will be the balancing test, and which you've looked at the various factors which we discussed before, and those would be the variances that would be before this board.
Motion to approve both variances?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
ZBA 0218, 49 Spring Street. This is the lot next to the bus stop.
I think you adjourned them.
They
but
have to
you
get
should
it, they're
request
adjourned because they have to come back with 3 answers, 3 big major answers. One was the aqueduct,
the parking.
one was the parking, and one was to check their measurements of their rooms. Because you're never gonna let that happen, right? The measurements are wrong.
And on the aqueduct issue, they were before the planning board, and the issue was not resolved at the planning board. Because
Okay.
the same questions existed as to, first, who did council actually speak with, and the whole issue as to where is that aqueduct located, because the code is very clear that you have that 25-foot buffer that you're.
Well, and where is the aqueduct itself, the pipe located, and where is the path
Path,
located?
that's correct. So we need to go over all those maps and see what's
Because
going on.
I mean, I'm aware of all the way through the village, it goes by the firehouse but it also goes behind all the buildings on Highland Avenue, up by D&D Diner, you know, there's a whole aqueduct. Even when Avalon built, they had to stay clear of the thing. So I think we have a few questions that still need to be answered on that one. All right, thank you. 175, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't seem to have, I know when he flipped through his pages, there was a green space page he had. I didn't seem to have that in my copy of the drawings. I don't know, do we have that, we could pull 49 up?
Well, there was actually some paperwork that we didn't get.
I think a lot of this was in,
No, that I got.
I think Bob, part of it was in his planning board application. So what we can do is we can get copies and get that to all you folks, because he did have a submission to planning where he put in some of those different maps and diagrams.
Right.
So we can get that. He did not submit that as part of his ZBA application.
And I also believe he colored in the page that he submitted to you guys, which is where you got the color rendering from.
Okay, yeah, I don't have the color in it, but that's why I was
what I
asking.
believe.
So my concern with that is.
Well, he even said that some of his paperwork was with the planning board.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, since they have to come back with so much stuff, please make sure that we have all that information.
Do you want everything the planning board has?
Well, not everything, but we don't need everything.
Well,
but-
because what the lawyer brought today
Right.
was not part of their submission to the zoning board.
Right.
So,
And again, I just want to remind people, because we were handed these pictures at the last minute, we have these are pictures they took of the aqueduct. We just want to remind people that we have very strict restriction dates as to when paperwork can be submitted to the zoning board from application, and then when you're asked to get more documentation back to us, please go by those guidelines, or else we will adjourn you to the next meeting. Because the days of coming and handing out papers and expecting an answer aren't around anymore. Okay. ZBA, so that one is adjourned. Yeah. ZBA 0418, 57 North Malcolm, it's the stair. Oh, did I say, I'm sorry, I apologize. Oh, 175, oh, that's right. ZBA 0318, 175 Croton Avenue, it's to put a property on the second parcel And really, they're only here instead of to push the building back.
Right.
So the,
It's just the one variance.
the one variance, which is to push the building back, but I think we stressed the fact that we don't park in the front.
He has indicated he's taking that out,
So
that's
I think
correct.
that you need to bring that back to the planning board for us, that we, part of our agreement, that will be one of the conditions, is that the parking in the front lawn parking will be eliminated for us to
Correct.
give the variance that, yes, he can push the building back since the other house is pushed off back anyway.
But no front parking. Got it.
All right, do I have a motion? Do you have a question?
No, I'd like to make a motion that we approve that with
With the
that
condition.
stated with the conditions. Sure.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, now, CBA, always keep an eye on me, because I do say the number, and then we talk about something else, and I'll go back to it. CBA 0418, 57 North Malcolm, about wanted a variance to construct a code-compliant staircase to the basement. What conditions, Joe, do you think we could put on this so that there isn't any issue of it becoming, not that this gentleman would do it, but, that he has to keep the inside staircase.
Right, which the way, when he explained how it was gonna be, that enclosure was to keep the interior. I thought that maybe there was a door to access from there too.
Oh, I see.
But that's not the case.
Okay.
So I'm guessing the egress right now that he's created is through the existing Bilco doors in the back.
So we just want to make sure that we satisfy other people's concerns that, it not become a living inhabitant, a second apartment. Because there's all these restrictions you have anyway for, even if you are allowed to do it in the basement in that particular zone, height requirements
And
and.
Stuart, I guess, would have to answer to this. Can the condition be set where the egress component is not to be through, say, the stairway with a window, and then they grant the variance for the interior staircase setback?
No, he wants the.
But doesn't he want an exterior staircase? Wasn't that, in other words?
No, the enclosure, from what he explained was, that enclosure was to build a code compliant staircase from the first floor to the downstairs.
Oh, but outside?
No,
No,
that's
through
an
the mud,
interior.
using an extended
No.
mudroom, correct?
What he explained was that's why I was trying to get more clarity of that staircase, was that staircase was to make a code compliant interior staircase from the first floor to the basement,
Through the mudroom?
through the mudroom.
Okay.
But I don't think there was a door, that's what I was trying to find out, was there a door that leads into that enclosure? Or is it all closed in and it's only access through the apartment?
Through the first floor?
Right.
Because when you say apartment, it makes people
I mean
get
the first floor,
nervous.
right.
Okay.
So if that's the case and there isn't a door, if the only way to the basement is from the first floor interior, and there's no other way to get into the basement from outside other than from the first floor or through those Bilco doors in the back.
Okay, because my understanding, he needed two egress, and that the second door that was going to be an outside door, so he was actually going to extend the bump out.
Right.
So that's where maybe I could be confused on that, so that's.
Look, I said you have to go outside to go downstairs.
I think the question is exactly what the person asking for.
Right.
Because, if I go back, the letter from Mr. Ferrara is to access the lower level. We'd like to construct a new stairway from an existing mudroom off of the dining room. So I'm just trying to, that's why I was confused now with what is.
So I'm gonna request that this particular applicant go back and meet with the building department, come up with what the final determination is that you want, because I'm not 110% sure of why they were denied in there before the zoning board of appeals in the first place. So why don't we have the gentleman come back to the building department, and if everything is coping, everything is fine, He doesn't have to come next time, and you just come and we'll have a presentation and you can decide on it.
Okay.
Okay, but I would like to know, because I really, even during the presentation, I was wondering in the back of my brain, why were they before the zoning board in the first place? If it's inside the house. Because they're bump out?
Because of
Yeah.
the bump out.
Okay. Okay, because you know what I mean? I'm just,
That's why he was looking for an area variance for the bump out that it didn't meet the side
So
setback.
I ask the gentleman to please come and talk to you and have him get everything covered, and then we can do it. So we're all on the same page, because I heard something a little bit different too. Okay? All right. I'd like to, that's the end of our cases for this evening, and I'd like to get an approval of the minutes from the March 13th, 2018 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes from March?
Now, there's only two of us here that were there.
So you're gonna have to hold that off till the next meeting.
Okay. I don't think we had any resolutions in it anyway. So we'll hold this off to the next meeting, since there was only two of us here last meeting that are here today. And now we're going to go into a discussion of the affordable housing legislation before the Village Board of Trustees. Ms. McGillivray.
Now with.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully you folks all have a copy of what is the most recent version of the proposed local law 3 for affordable housing. The Village Board of Trustees asked for comment.
Why don't we give them
Sure.
minutes to find,
Find it.
which means me, to find it in their stack of papers, since I was shuffling stuff so fast. Okay. I know I have it. Does anyone need to take a quick break or anything?
Sure.
Everybody else do it. My joy is to throw this stuff. That.
I've reviewed this enough. If you'd like my copy, I'm more than happy.
I know, right? I'm just trying to check if I have it here, because I know I was so efficient this week. Probably just on the bottom of my file here. It is. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Board of Trustees had asked for comments from both the Planning Board and the Zoning Board with regard to proposed affordable housing or changes to the affordable housing code in the village. Currently, it is a 10% set aside for 6 units or more at 80% area median income. The proposal would be to increase the set aside to 20% and to decrease the area median income to 60%. That would be
for all the units?
That would be, well, for new units, for all units. What I'll get into in a second is for buildings that are over 100 units being contemplated, the set aside, the 20% set aside would be on a sliding scale of the AMIs. A certain percentage would be for very low AMIs, then for sort of in the middle, and then for slightly higher AMIs to do that. The numbers I just quoted before, the 10% at 80% AMI and the proposed 20% at 60 is for rental units only. It would be a 70% AMI for purchase in that situation. There is also an additional 5% bonus if very low affordable housing is offered, which we're defining as 50% or lower of AMI, which is consistent with, I believe, the Housing and Urban Development Guidelines for those definitions. And so basically that's, in a nutshell, what the change would be. There are a few, one of the reasons that we wanted to get this board involved and the planning board involved is that issues may well come up if someone is able to get particular bonuses for their density that they put into affordable housing, they may have to come before this board, they may have to go before the planning board in terms of what it is they're entitled to and what they can actually receive. And that's why, we just wanted to get, comments from you folks. But the 2060 was a number that has been pushed around by the Board of Trustees. Again, it's all still in draft legislation. Nothing's been passed. There have been discussions at work sessions, but no public hearing on any proposed legislation, at this point. So for those board members who are unaware, the area median income is the figure that is used by Housing and Urban Development to essentially determine, what you can afford for a particular house. So if you're at 80% of AMI, that's basically you're at the 80% level, and that's for Westchester County. The fact of the matter is, in Ossining, our numbers are actually closer to 60% in terms of those numbers, in terms of what the area median income is. So it's one of the reasons that it was looked to do that, and it was another reason why they were looking to increase the amount of units that would go into affordables. Currently, as I said, it's 10%. That's always rounded up to the next highest number. In this case, it would then go up to 20%. So you can simply do the calculations for some of the projects that are coming down the pipeline. That could be a significant increase in the number of affordable units that might ultimately be there.
Couple of questions.
Sure.
Does the amount of units still stick with 10 equals 1 affordable unit? And, is it on buildings that size?
It goes with, actually, it's 6 units and greater.
6 units and greater.
6 units and greater.
So you're saying 10%?
So that number turns to 20?
That number turns to 20.
So right now, the law reads that when you build 6 units or more, you have to set aside 10% of the units you're building for affordable.
Is there anything in this law that says that's something that's in the pipeline?
No.
Once you're in the pipeline, you go with the...
Usually you'd add something at the end of the legislation that would say that if you've either pulled a building permit or gotten an approval by X date, you would be grandfathered into the old regulations.
Right.
But, that's something we can address on this. If it were
I'm just
passed.
asking, because I know that once you're in the pipeline, it usually, especially with zoning codes and stuff like that, you stick with the zoning codes you were when you started your application.
Well, you need to pull an approval to sort of vest or something, or to pull a building permit, whatever you determine, or the Board of Trustees determines, excuse me.
Well, are they going to have a date that they're gonna set here, or it just sounds like an open blanket right now?
For
Well, I
the date
understand what
for,
you're saying. We
date for
approve
approval?
it, April 10th, or they approve it their next board meeting, it should be from that date
Oh, no, they have to have public hearings and everything.
Well, what I'm
Oh, it's a
saying,
whole
I'm just
process.
saying, when it is approved, then that's when it should take effect.
Right,
It
it
shouldn't
says
go
that,
back.
so
It
it
should
says the
backdate.
local law shall take effect immediately upon filing with the New York State's Secretary of State.
But I think, Bob, I think your point is fair, and yours as well, is if you have something that's in the pipeline, what happens there? For example, the difference is in a zoning situation, if someone applies and the zoning code changes,
Right.
they actually are guided by the zoning code at the time the board reaches its decision, unless there's a special circumstance. It's called special fact circumstances, in which case you could go back. But they have to show that it's a whole different thing.
I know that
but-
from my past
right.
history with dealing with some of these situations, I know it was very important to, if you're gonna change legislation, to
That's
have
very
it
true.
at a certain, if.
There's no question that would have to, and that's not in here now, and I appreciate the board bringing that up, because clearly if you're a developer and you've put in your plans thinking you're at 10%, at 8% AMI,
All of a sudden.
and suddenly I knock on your door and say it's now 20, it's 60, your entire pro forma has changed, your entire finance.
Well, also
has
your,
changed.
and also all your bonuses have changed, because,
Well, yeah, that's right.
next thing you know, we have, and I'll make up a number, because I don't wanna be even close to any number of any development, so you have a development that's gonna be 200 units, it's a major difference if you start doing the bonuses involved with this
Right.
versus the, again, and then again, can the property hold that kind of bonus? And,
That's-
we have all height requirements, and we have,
And that's why we wanted to come before you, because if you start taking those bonuses and put them on top, even if there's a maximum amount you can do per acre.
Right.
At the end of the day, it may come up against some of your bulk requirements and some of, which would represent potentially more zoning applications to
I
you
think,
folks.
and I think it's very important for the public, when they watch this meeting, to understand that this is Village of Ossining only.
Correct.
This is not the unincorporated town,
No.
nor Briarcliff.
Only
This is
village,
Village of Ossining.
only village,
Right.
which has their own.
So Stuart, so
Yeah.
what exactly are they looking for from us? You said
Just
Comment.
more comments. I mean, there's been a significant amount of debate at the work sessions on this, in terms of where the various board members are. But it's really, some board members wanted to get a sense just from the land use boards, because at the end of the day, these applications are not gonna come to the Board of Trustees. They're gonna come to you folks. And so, in a sense, and I should point out that when this came before the planning board, one of the things that was mentioned is, operationally, this has really no impact, in the sense that, if the board decides to change it to 2060, they change it to 2060. But
Right.
it's more, what you folks may see. In other words, you may start seeing more units that are suddenly gonna be put in, or perhaps more units, but in smaller spaces.
I was gonna
And
say,
that's what
so
I'm saying.
instead of going with the big number, you go with a small number, so you're looking for,
Yeah, because that 200 units becomes 40
right,
instead of 20.
right. And it's significant, because we've run into it with the 10%. So that would be our comments would be, when would this take, what part in the pipeline, so you can tell the people that are in the pipeline. We don't see everybody in the pipeline, because if you're in zoning compliance, we never see the people that go before the planning board.
Correct.
That, that don't need to come before the zoning board. And, so that people understand that they have to. And the other question would be, if you had a situation where you either got your extension on your variances or you didn't, and you had to come back before the zoning board again in an apartment building situation, not necessarily anything, 6 or more units.
Right.
If you're going before the zoning board, are you going back before the planning board because you are now in a whole new situation? So that's really what it is what is the timing of it? What's the timing of it if you're in the pipeline at all?
Right. And Bob, just so you know, in terms of where this goes, I expect that the Board of Trustees will discuss this again probably on the 25th. There would then have to be ultimately a piece of legislation that I would finally draft. There would be a call for a public hearing. Then there would be a public hearing. That public hearing may actually be kept open, because I expect on this will be one of those, there'll be a lot of comments. It's ultimately be closed, and then it would only be 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks after that it would be voted on. So it's moving, but there's things, but Marcel, in response to your question, this is the kind of, just to get these kind of discussions, to essentially see some of where the points are. I think in terms of 60 versus, 20 versus 6, 20 versus 10, 60 versus 80, at the end of the day, that's going to be a Board of Trustees decision as to what they think. It's more that some of these applications will ultimately come, before you, because.
Or come back before us.
Or come back to you in whatever way. So that's really where the sense is, because, we have bulk requirements, but we also have now density bonuses. So
Right.
there's a tension there that's going to come up.
Do you get a sense this is a fait accompli, or?
No.
Okay.
I get a sense that there's a significant discussion on it. I think there is still work to be done. There's a question as to whether or not there should be some, economic study to see if in fact those numbers ultimately make sense, because there are developers who have indicated 2060 is just not
They're done.
doable.
Yeah, they're
It's
done.
not doable. So I think that, and that's a separate issue. So to the extent is this what I gave you, what's going to ultimately be, no. There's much more that has to be done.
Can you tell me what it means here, this reference in section C, affordable housing unit shall, and it talks about unless a different proportion is approved by the planning board as being better suited to the housing needs of the village?
The thought was this, as of right now, the percent, if someone is building 1 and 2 bedrooms in a particular percentage, the affordable housing that's offered within that 20 has to match that percentage. Here, the idea was, let's say it's a particular location and the planning board is of the view, it might be better if you're building these number of units, but we think that more of the two bedrooms should be affordables rather than just keep the percentage of 8%. So they would have the option to do that. I can tell you, that's a subject that has been a subject of debate among the Board of Trustees, because they have not, I've left that in because that's many of the ordinances in Westchester County actually have that provision in there. So I've left it in because there's been not a consensus of the board as to whether it should come out. But that's what it basically means. Right now, you follow the percentages of how you divide up your affordable units match what your percentages are in your units overall. This would give the planning board the option to change that if they thought that maybe you need more two bedrooms or something along those lines.
But they could also say, we need more one bedroom.
Exactly right. They could change it whatever way they thought was appropriate.
It might be senior,
Right.
right. Senior affordable.
Exactly right.
If you look at D on page 8, applicants are eligible for reduction in parking to one parking space per unit for each affordable unit. Is that in the current law too?
No, and this was a recommendation made by a couple of the trustees. It is again another thing that is in, there's been a lot of debate on it because given particularly with the tightness of parking, you're essentially, changing the reduction there. So that is not in our current code. It is just something that was another suggestion. So that's, again, why this is far from in a final form.
I have to tell you that back when the affordable housing 10% law was put into effect, I was part of that committee, and we took our time, we worked on it. It was probably one of the first in Westchester County, so it's easier now to piggyback and change it. Our comments are not on the numbers, that is again the Board of Trustees. It's how does it affect this board?
That's correct.
And I'm sure the planning board has said, how does it affect the other board?
Same thing.
Does this change just for the audience sake, does this change the buyout number?
Well, the buyout number was actually changed at the end of last year. I think it's $375,000. So that's changed.
Just for everybody's, if you want to buy out and not put your affordable unit in, you can buy it out for $375,000.
Per unit.
Per unit, yeah. Per unit.
And that money would go to an affordable housing fund.
Okay.
Well, I thank you all. This was very helpful.
Any other questions? Any other comments?
It's pretty clear.
Great. Do I have a motion to adjourn this very active first meeting for Bob?
I would make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Those in favor? Say aye. Thank you. Have a wonderful month. We'll see you next month, and onward and upward.